Muddy Boots. With a new month and a new season comes a new Q&A and a load of new questions. This month we have cottage garden plants, edible garden design, soil health, nature strip gardening, tomato seedlings, tree pruning and more. So grab a cup of tea. You got yours?
I got a glass of water.
Find a comfy chair and join us for a jam-packed session. Question number 1. Let's go straight to it, Keith. It comes from Ella, who says, I have a question that I've tried to do some research on but haven't found a lot. I bought a property in the Southern Downs region of Queensland recently and planted Photinia red robins as a screener in March of this year. I planted roughly 80 into black soil that had previously been cropped with barley planted in the area prior to us purchasing the property. About 10 of the plants in one section have very small leaves, whereas the others are thriving. I originally thought it might be the result of residual spray in the soil, as a couple of trees have died in this section. However, I wouldn't have thought the effect of the spray would have lasted this long. Do you think I should dig the 10 trees up and try to improve the soil health, or is there something else I should do? I didn't add anything to the soil at planting time, but have since used sea salt in this area. And Ella has provided some photos of the affected Photinia plants. Keith.
Right, Ella, I've had a look from the pictures and I can see the tops of the leaves are smaller and some burning on some of the leaf margins, which is indicative of wet roots. So your soil sounds great, sounds full of organic matter, so maybe there is some contamination within the soil that is causing some problems. I would strongly suggest that you use some Myco Gold, which we always talk about here on Muddy Boots, on your plants, and you need to go around each of the plants and get some holes down beside the drip line. And then pour some Myco Gold down through that using a watering can as per the instructions. The sea salt is great in helping create strong cell structure, but keep an eye on the soil moisture. Keep the straw mulch that you've got in those photographs away from the trunks of the plants, as you don't want to be causing any collar rot. And if you do those sorts of things, and particularly the Myco Gold, I think you'll set yourself up for a lot of success and a lot of quick growth happening.
Fabulous. The next question is from Pamela. Here it comes. I'm hoping you can give me some advice on the following. Excuse me. A section of my garden needs to be remulched, and I was thinking of using what I call cracker dust, which I think is very similar to granitic sand. I already have 2 mature citrus trees, a crepe myrtle and some nandinas in the area, and if I put cracker dust down, how should I feed the plants, or should I make sure not to put it close to the plants? Is it cracker dust?
Yeah, they call it look, every state's going to call it something different, but what it is actually the fines from creating aggregates for screenings and road base and all that sort of stuff. So they crush all the big rocks up into smaller rocks that become smaller rocks, become much smaller rocks, become cracker dust, rock dust, or something else a little bit like that. So we have granitic sand that we use here in Victoria, particularly in your garden. That's all granitic sand. But the best thing you can actually do is to apply compost to all the plants before you add the crusher dust, and then make sure that after that you give all your plants a regular feed of a liquid fertiliser, and that will just sustain them, and that will work out really, really well. So crusher dust is a great thing to be put down once you've done all the preparation, composting, Myco Gold, rock dust, the works, before you put that down.
What liquid fertiliser?
You could use just about any liquid fertiliser. Okay. You know, Charlie Carp's all right. Okay. Power Feed's all right.
Is there a new one? EC?
Well, that's not available commercially, so I can't really recommend that one yet. Okay. It might come a little bit later.
Okay.
So there you go.
Thank you. Good luck, Pamela. Richie has the next question, and he says, I've just this week found your podcast after discovering Keith on social media. Keith is viral now. I love your practical approach to gardening and am intrigued about the moon calendar. I thought that you said we could find a link to the moon calendar on your website, but I'm having trouble finding it there, so I'd be happy to buy one from you. Can you please advise how I can buy one or find the info, Keith?
Yeah, if you Google www.moon moongardeningcalendar.com. No .au, just moon calendar gardening. Moon gardening calendar.
Moongardeningcalendar.com.
Yeah, that's it.
You sure?
They're all of $15. They are perpetual, which means that they will last for as long as you look after them.
You do.
Mine's about 20 years old and it still works beautifully. And you just simply align the new moon each month to the date that it says it is, and you can easily get that. It comes with the actual moon calendar. You'll get a sheet with the new moons already set up on it. So just work to that, and I guarantee that you'll find that working in the garden is more rewarding, and you will get far better results by following the moon
Gardening calendar. And it is so
.com.
.com, and it is so true. It does work brilliantly. I just keep it on the fridge and follow it each month.
Exactly.
Now we have a question from Caroline about cottage garden plants. Caroline says, I would love a recommendation for grasses and indeed other plants for structure in a cottage garden.
Yes, not easy to sort of give you a real quick view on that one, or a quick answer on that one. Whatever you do, you need to make sure that you're getting the right selection of the plants in terms of the colours that they're going to be working with. So if you start off by getting yourself a little piece of paper and drawing up the area you're going to be working with, having a look at the sizes of the plants that you're going to be putting into that area, making sure that the taller stuff is to the back and the smaller stuff is to the front, and always use it in groups. So always select your plants in terms of threes or fours or fives or six or even nines, depending on the size of the plant. Group them all up together. And when you're working it out on a piece of paper, if you get a coloured pencil and actually just colour in the colours of those plants in that area, you'll get a far better layout of how those colours are going to work for you. But look, I could design it on a drawing board, but coming up with it, just on a Q&A is a little bit more difficult. Soften it up a little bit. Think about adding some beautiful ornamental grasses. If you want something tall at the background, then have a look at some of the miscanthus varieties. You want something a little bit shorter at the front, then go for something like stipa or calamagrostis. These are just beautiful plants, beautiful grasses to sort of really emphasise and the whole theme of your garden.
Yep. And we're looking at that out the window now. Lovely grasses. They are fantastic to have in the garden. Okay, now it's time for Meg's question. I love this one. She says, I have a question about my nature strip garden project. My intention is to create a naturalistic native garden that is beneficial to birds, insects and passers-by through a variety of flowers and foliage. The garden area is rectangular, 4 by 14 metres, and it's on the south side of our house and is located in the cool, temperate zone of Bendigo. It receives morning and afternoon sunlight, but I would consider it part shade. It has clay soils, which we have enriched with organic compost and a layer of thick-grade pine mulch. We are on a corner block, so the plants need to be low height so as not to impair vision for drivers. What would be your advice and plant suggestions for this project? I've purchased a bucket of bush tucker, which is by Nutrog, the native plant food, and we will use that once we get to planting.
Yeah, look, once again, you really need to be mindful of the area that you're working with. So you're going to have a driveway that is coming out next to that particular garden bed. So you need to have good sight lines. So you don't want to be putting anything in there that's going to be too high, even in the middle, that's going to block out your sight lines. And the same thing applies because you're on a corner, that you need to be considering what other people are going to be seeing when they drive their cars around. So I would be starting off with, maybe at the ends of the garden beds, thinking about low growing native grasses. So things like Poa labiladera is a beautiful little native grass that will grow up in that area. Think about some anigaxanthus, which are kangaroo paws. They will work quite nicely. Bit of colour, Pimelia. There's one called Magenta Mist, which will give you a beautiful looking flower colour in there as well. Correas are great to put through there. You've also got some things like Banksias, the dwarf Banksias. Banksia spinulosa. There's a lot of dwarf forms of that there, and some lamandras. So these are all low-growing plants that will tightly fill in those particular spaces. And I've sort of given you a little bit of a rough drawing of just how that I would lay it out for you. But
you gave her a rough
I've
drawing?
given her a little bit of a
you
rough
sent her
drawing,
one.
and the only reason I could do that was because I had a few spare moments to do that for. I'm not going to be doing it for everyone's garden, I'm afraid.
Don't get excited.
I've got too much else happening, but I've just helped you out there with that.
Fantastic.
So there you go.
That's great. Tina is next, and she sent us some photos of her rather harshly pruned crabapple tree. She says, unfortunately, while we were away, our house sitter thought he'd help by pruning my crabapple tree so he'd get the ride-on mower under it. You can see from the photos that the tree used to have a lovely shape with low branches which were gorgeous and also provided some privacy all year round. He has butchered it, as you can see. It is lopsided with only one mature low branch on one side, which he has also stripped of most of the smaller branches. And all the young and old low branches are completely gone. I don't know if there's anything I can do, and I'm wondering what you can suggest besides killing the house sitter.
I don't think the house sitter will be getting an invitation to come back on this one again,
Tina.
Tina.
He's probably not sleeping.
I'm really sorry to hear that. Tina and I, we've had a little bit of a to and fro on this, and what I've suggested that she does is to turn the buds on the bare branches on again. So what I've suggested is her having a look at the low-lying branches. So if you can imagine in this particular tree, we've got horizontal branches coming out from underneath where they are now just totally nude all the way along those branches. So what I've suggested that she does is have a look along the top of those branches and try to identify a node. Now, when she can identify the nodes that are on top of those branches, then what we want to do is we want to stop the sap flow going around those nodes and continuing out to the very end branches and then turning those on. What I want her to do is to take a saw and make a cut towards the outside of each one of those nodes and cut through probably down, maybe 3 or 4 mil into the actual wood part of the actual branch. And what will happen then is that the sap flow will go around there and it's got nowhere else to go but to that node. And that will then turn that node on, and that node should produce a new branch all the way along those branches. So that's what you can do when someone has come along and butchered your plants.
Clever.
So there you go. Have a go at that. And then what I'd suggest you do is initially when the plant starts to produce those new branches, apply some sea salt, and then once the plant has produced its leaves, then I would use something like Nutrog Gigantic. Apply that around the drip line of the tree, and that will get that up and going. And I think that apart from having your house sitter come back, you should be pretty cool about that with a new plant.
Well done, Keith. Clever. Now we have 3 questions from Julia. Question number 1. Last August, we planted a viburnum quick fence hedge along the front of our property. The plants have had a good amount of growth over the last year, and I'm wondering what I should be doing now, going into spring, to encourage as much all overgrowth as possible. What additions to the soil do you suggest, and what do you recommend in regard to pruning?
Look, the first thing you've got to really consider there is your soil. That's the number one thing, and I'd be putting as much compost into that soil as you can possibly be getting into it, and then getting some myco gold and working that down. And we've already spoken about the myco gold, but that's probably one of the best things you can actually be doing to that particular soil and that particular conditions. In terms of pruning and shaping, well, that's something that you've got to look at and address every single plant on that particular basis. Just work it out on that. What other question do we have?
Okay, fine. That's it then.
That's it.
Number two. We are currently designing a veggie patch, mini orchard and chicken coop for our backyard. I've seen many designs online where the chicken coop run opens out into the veggie patch. Is this something you would recommend in order to turn over beds after harvesting, or will they destroy everything in my garden?
You certainly will. Chicken coops are great for having runs into the fruit trees, as the chooks will find and scratch out all the nasty little pests like the snails and the slugs, and they'll even find codling moth in the soils as well,
Fantastic.
as well as sawfly larvae for for cherry slugs and these sorts of things. So they're great to put around a particular fruit tree
Type of
run,
tree.
but
Yep.
you would never ever put chooks in a vegetable garden because you
There
won't
won't
have
be
one.
anything left.
You will not have a vegetable garden. And I keep on thinking back to the day that I took pots of beautiful Australian yellow leaf lettuce round to my daughter-in-law's place, and I left them on the decking, and they were beautiful looking specimens, and I didn't notice that, because they weren't home, I didn't notice that they had let the chooks out. So when I got home, I got a photo of the pots and they were nearly bare. And she said to me, I bet they didn't look like this when you dropped them off. So chooks love vegetables. They will eat anything in the vegetable patch. So
Healthy.
never ever have a chook run open to a vegetable garden, because it's just never going to work.
There you go. Now for Julia's last question. I planted my tomato seeds into paper pots 2 weeks ago and most have germinated. I have noticed some have a thin layer of white mould growing on top of the potting mix. Is this a bad thing and will it stop my seeds from germinating? I don't currently have a greenhouse, so have them sitting on my dining room table.
That white stuff is a mould, and it's a natural organism. And what it is doing, it is breaking down components of the potting mix you've got in there, and it's turning that potting mix into a compost, which is perfectly harmless. So that's not to be. You don't need to worry about that one little iota, because that is all nature's goodness working together.
Perfect. Kath has the next question. I have a question about my 5-year-old capital ornamental pear, which is starting to lean. It appears that a main root could be wrapped around the tree and pulling it sideways, so I'm assuming it was root bound when planted. Can this root be cut and pulled straight and staked, or would this be detrimental to the stability and health of the tree? It is one in an avenue of trees, and I'm concerned that it will continue to lean more as the tree grows.
Yeah, I believe you made a correct assumption about the root-bound plant. Unfortunately, severing the root may cause further damage, and if it's done incorrectly. In my opinion, it'd be worth trying to reduce as much growth on the side that is leaning to encourage weight transference onto the other side, and that will balance that out. Failing that, then a replacement tree might be the best option, but planting it with compost and with Myco Gold fungal spores will be the best thing you can do for that plant in order to get it to catch up to the other plants that are currently there. So it's one of those things that if you had an arborist round, he might suggest that you could cut that and layer it out. But failing that, I think that the best option is to sort of balance the tree up by taking off the weight on the side that's leaning, and get the other side to balance it out, and maybe pull that tree back upright.
Great. Myco Gold's getting a good old
Myco Gold is getting a great
today too.
Yep, absolutely.
Where do you get Myco Gold from, Keith?
You get Myco Gold from info@biostim.com.au.
Great. Okay, we have a question or questions from Bridget. Bridget or Brigitte? I don't know how we pronounce that. Brigitte. Now around garden design. Here we go. My husband and I have 2 young children and we've just bought a house in Geelong, Victoria. The house and garden need a lot of work, and with young kids we're on a budget and short on time. It's exciting but also overwhelming not knowing where to start. From your podcast, I've learned that soil health is the foundation. Isn't that good to hear?
Yep, that's
so
great.
I've stocked up on Monash Rock Dust, Nutrogs Choco-Block and Gigantic, and I'll be investing in Myco Gold. There it is again. Where I'm really struggling is garden bed design and plant choices, so much so that it's made me press pause. We've bought the Royal Horticultural Society's garden design book, which has some great tips, but I'm still unsure how to begin. The previous owners clearly loved the garden, but it hasn't been maintained for years. Here's what we have. The front garden has a row of roses, including a climbing rose on an arch, iceberg roses and a south-facing camellia. I've just planted some PG hydrangea paniculatas. The back garden consists of a silver birch, rhododendron, magnolia, cherry tree, a camellia and some random roses all along a fence on the western side. The back fence, which is north-facing, has a plum tree, an apple, an apricot and a lemon tree. As a side note, I've loved watching your pruning videos on Instagram, Keith. They've been very helpful. Other features include ferns and tree ferns along the east-facing back fence, some of which seem to have a fungal disease, though they're still producing new growth. We'd like to keep as many of the existing plants as possible to limit costs.
Yep.
I'm especially drawn to country gardens, but I also love it when people blend native flowers into a country-style garden. So now we have the questions. Number 1, do you have any recommendations on where to start with garden bed shape? We've been given a lot of moss rocks and are trying to use them to make curvy garden beds.
Yeah, that's a lot of questions, and it's a lot to cover. And with my own design work, I can't address everything for you, unfortunately. Firstly, you're right about the soil, and yes, this is where you begin, as it is the foundation for your garden and for everything else that you come. With regards to the sugarcane mulch, it's not any of my choices for a mulch, but you don't need to remove it. Rather, you need to apply Rooster Booster at a couple of handfuls per square metre, which will provide food for the microbes to help convert it into a proper mulch. The very first thing you need to do is sit down with your husband and write yourselves a garden brief, which will encompass all the things that you wanted to get from your garden. This is the start of how you design your garden. As you are going to create the garden yourself, you need a plan of the garden that is to scale so you can draw in the garden beds and to get the shape right. I've always said, if it works on paper, it will work in reality. You need to do some research on the plants that work, and therefore you need to see them in a situation like a garden display. The best native nursery in Victoria is a long drive away from where you are, but it would make a great day trip for you and the family, and that nursery is Kuranga. It's Kuranga Nursery, and it's in Mount Evelyn, and they have absolutely fantastic garden displays. The address is 118 York Road, Mount Evelyn. Now, when it gets to your tree fern, it doesn't look very well at all. So I would suggest that you put your fingers into the top middle of the tree fern and feel for any firm unfolded fronds. If they are present, then ensure the fern is kept watered on a regular basis, and it should be fine and come back to life. If the tree fern the botanical name for that is Dicksonia antarctica, you can actually, if you wanted to move it into a far better, healthier spot, you can actually go and get a saw, cut it off at ground level, go and dig a hole, put some compost in that hole, and then just plant the cut off that you've taken straight into that hole, and away it'll go. It'll be perfectly all right.
I think you've just answered all her questions, which I haven't even asked you yet.
Oh, God.
Keith. Gosh. So I'll just tell you what the questions were. Question 2 was, how do I work out what plants to pair with what I already have? I don't know. Did you sort of answer that one?
Well, that's where she's got to go to a nursery.
Yeah. Okay. Question 3 was, what natives would you recommend that suit a country garden look? And you mentioned Kuranga. So go to Kuranga and have a look.
A fabulous range.
Correct. And the next question was, I've attached some pics of the ferns, and you've answered that one. Mm-hmm. The next question was about the sugarcane mulch. And we're talking about sugarcane mulch. I'm going, where did she say that? So her question was, before I knew sugarcane mulch wasn't ideal, I mulched all my garden beds with it. Now that I'm adding compost and Monash rock dust, should I remove the sugarcane mulch completely and replace it with pine bark, or just leave it? And you said you would recommend
just leave it and just put some organic nitrogenous fertiliser on top of it to help break it down.
Okay. Now, that's the end of our questions for today, but we did talk about some Nutrog products, and that reminds me that it's a good time to mention that Nutrog has a fantastic monthly newsletter filled with the latest gardening tips, inspiring stories, new product releases, and more. It's definitely worth checking out, and to do that, you just go onto their website, nutrog.com.au, and look for the Home Gardener page to sign up to the monthly newsletter. So I mentioned at the start of the podcast that this would be a jam-packed Q&A, and it has been, because look at your face, it's red.
It is.
All fabulous questions, though. Thank you so much to everyone who contributed this month. Now we have come to that exciting time of the Q&A where we announce the winner of this month's prize from the Plant Runner. This month, the prize goes to Bridget.
Or Birgit.
Birgit. I think we can all tell that she has a huge and exciting job ahead of her in the garden, so we hope the package from the Plant Runner will provide her with some help and encouragement. And thank you, as always, to Dunk and Jimmy at the Plant Runner for their fabulous support of Muddy Boots. Go to theplantrunner.com for all your indoor plant care products. Thank you for listening to Muddy Boots. For more information on today's podcast, please go to muddyboots.net.au, and happy gardening.